First contact with despair. The grand archive of the collective trembled, not from any physical disturbance, but from the waves of despair emanating from the 100 most powerful beings in the galaxy gathered within its crystalline chambers. The archive, typically a sanctuary of knowledge and contemplation, had become a refuge of last resort. High Archivist Valen, their translucent form dimming with each new report, floated before the assembled leaders. The holographic displays surrounding them painted their faces in an eerie red glow, each screen showing another system going dark. The Void Cascade, as they had come to call it, was consuming worlds faster than anyone had predicted. The Centauri defense grid has fallen, Valen announced, their voice modulator barely masking their distress. 3 billion souls, gone, just like the others. The beam's crystalline structure clouded, a sign of deep emotional turmoil among their species. The assembled leaders, representing everything from silicon-based hive minds to plasma entities, remained silent. They had seen this pattern too many times now. The Void Cascade would appear at the edge of a system, a writhing mass of dark energy that defied the laws of physics. Traditional weapons passed through it harmlessly. Energy shields crumbled before it. Even the legendary quantum barriers of the Zigzag theory had lasted mere minutes. Our predictive models indicate total galactic consumption within 30 standard cycles, continued Valen, each word heavier than the last. The outer rim is all ready. They paused as a new alert flashed across their consciousness. We've lost contact with the Orion Collective. Supreme Commander Zix of the militant domains slammed their primary appendage against the ancient table, leaving a scorch mark on its surface. Impossible. The Orion Collective had our most advanced defensive systems. Their quantum arrays alone should have, could have, would have, interrupted a new voice, causing every being in the chamber to turn toward its source. Standing in the doorway was a figure most had only seen in data streams, a human. Dr. Elena Santos walked into the chamber with the casual confidence that her species was known for, her dark skin contrasting with the stark white of her research uniform. The human's presence here was itself a violation of at least 3 collective protocols. Their species had only achieved faster-than-light travel 2 cycles ago. Dr. Santos, Valen acknowledged, their tone carrying a mix of confusion and mild irritation. This is a closed session of the Emergency Council. Your species observer status does not grant. With respect, High Archivist, Elena interrupted again, pulling out a small holographic projector. You need to see this. She placed the device on the table, and it sprang to life, showing readings that made several council members recoil. These are impossible readings, declared Zix, their burning form flickering with agitation. No one has been able to get sensor data from within the cascade. It destroys all probes before they can transmit. Elena allowed herself a small smile. That's because you've all been trying to study it with technology that's too advanced. She gestured to the hologram, which showed chaotic energy patterns that seemed to defy analysis. We sent in something much more primitive, a modified version of what we used to study black holes back when we were barely leaving our solar system. The chamber erupted in overlapping translations as dozens of species tried to speak at once. Valen raised their crystalline form to its full height, silencing the chaos. Explain, they commanded. The Void Cascade isn't just consuming systems, Elena said, manipulating the hologram to show more detailed readings. It's learning from them. Every advanced civilization it encounters, every piece of sophisticated technology it absorbs, it adapts to them. That's why your defenses fail. They're too perfect, too predictable. She paused, letting the implications sink in. But human technology, our crude, inefficient, sometimes barely functional technology, it doesn't register as a threat. The cascade doesn't adapt to what it doesn't consider worth learning from. The chamber fell silent as the beings processed this information. It was Supreme Commander Zix who finally spoke, their flame-like form dimming slightly. Are you suggesting we fight this cosmic horror with primitive technology. Elena shook her head, her eyes gleaming with an intensity that made several council members uncomfortable. No, I'm suggesting something much more insane than that. She pulled out a second device, this one clearly of human manufacture, its casing scratched and worn. I'm suggesting we fight it with human chaos. The hologram changed, showing a complex series of calculations that even the most advanced AI in the chamber struggled to follow. Not because they were too sophisticated, but because they seemed to follow no logical pattern at all. You've all been trying to fight the cascade with order, with precision, with perfect solutions, Elena continued. But chaos is the one thing it can't adapt to because chaos, by definition, defies prediction. And if there's one thing humanity excels at, it's creating controlled chaos. Valen's form brightened slightly, the first sign of hope they had shown in cycles. What exactly are you proposing, Dr. Santos? Elena's smile widened, showing teeth, a gesture that still made some species uncomfortable. I'm proposing Operation Butterfly, named after an old Earth theory about how tiny chaotic changes can create massive, unpredictable results. We'll need volunteers, ships, and, she paused for effect, permission to break about 15 different laws of physics. The chamber erupted again, but this time there was something different in the chaos, a spark of hope, however faint. As the council debated, Elena stood quietly, watching the hologram of the void cascade churning through space. Humanity had spent its entire history fighting against chaos, trying to impose order on an uncaring universe. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to embrace their chaotic nature and use it as a weapon. The fate of the galaxy would depend not on the most advanced civilization, but on humanity's ability to be brilliantly, perfectly imperfect. Operation Butterfly. Deep within the retrofitted bowels of the collective's flagship, the Eternal Wisdom, Dr. Elena Santos stood before a motley crew of volunteers. The massive chamber, designed for the elegant quantum ceremonies of the collective, now housed what looked like a junkyard of human technology, spanning 3 centuries of development. This, Elena gestured to the bizarre array of machinery behind her, is either going to save the galaxy or get us all spectacularly killed. She paused, noting how the alien translators struggled with the concept of spectacular death. Possibly both. The assembled volunteers, a mix of humans and various alien species, shifted uncomfortably. At the front stood Commander Zix, their plasma form contained within an ancient environmental suit that looked like it had been salvaged from humanity's first Mars missions. Explain again. Zix's translator crackled. Why we must use these antiquated containment suits. The commander's flame flickered with what might have been embarrassment. Elena walked over to a massive screen cobbled together from old Earth LCD panels. Because everything new, everything advanced, everything perfect. The cascade adapts to it. But this, she tapped the scratched screen. This is too primitive, too random, too human for it to process. The screen flickered to life, showing footage from their test runs. The void cascade, a writhing mass of dark energy, completely ignored their probes made from repurposed 21st century satellites. While it devoured the advanced quantum sensors of the collective like a hungry beast, the old human technology slipped through unnoticed. The plan is beautiful in its insanity, Elena continued, pulling up more diagrams. We're going to create a quantum entanglement field using technology that by all rights shouldn't be capable of it. The imperfections, the glitches, the very flaws in our approach. That's our weapon. AZ's theory scientist, their crystalline form dulled with skepticism, raised an appendage. But the calculations, they're not just imprecise, they're wrong. The quantum coefficients are deliberately miscalibrated. The energy matrices are unbalanced. This violates every principle of. Exactly. Elena's eyes lit up with an almost manic enthusiasm. That's precisely why it will work. The cascade operates on perfect logic, perfect adaptation. It's a predator that evolved to counter perfect prey. But humans, she laughed. We're the species that sometimes succeeds precisely because we don't know something's impossible. She brought up another display, this one showing a dizzying array of mismatched equipment. Each team will be using different setups, different eras of technology, different levels of intentional malfunction. No pattern, no logic, just controlled chaos multiplied across quantum states. The chamber filled with murmurs as the implications sank in. They weren't just fighting the cascade. They were trying to confuse it, to overwhelm its ability to adapt by throwing so many different types of imperfection at it that it couldn't process them all. There's more, Alina said, her voice dropping slightly. We're not just using old technology. We're using old human thinking. Every team will be making decisions based on gut feelings, hunches, and what my grandmother used to call educated guesses. She smiled at the memory. No quantum computers, no predictive algorithms, just human intuition backed by alien power sources. Commander Zix's flame pulsed with what might have been amusement. You want us to fight the greatest threat our galaxy has ever faced, by guessing. Educated guessing, Alina corrected. And yes, because that's something the cascade can't predict or adapt to. It can't learn from chaos because chaos, by definition, defies learning. She walked among the volunteers, making eye contact with each human and equivalent sensory contact with each alien. Every one of you was chosen because you've shown the ability to think outside not just the box, but outside the entire concept of boxes. You're the misfits, the ones who make your superiors nervous, the ones who try the impossible solutions first. The screen behind her changed to show the void cascade's approach vector. They had less than 48 hours before it reached the core systems. We're going to divide into teams, each one operating on different principles, different technologies, different levels of controlled malfunction. When we attack, we'll be hitting the cascade with 1,000 different types of impossible, all at once. A human engineer raised her hand. What if it adapts anyway? What if it learns to counter chaos itself? Alina's smile turned predatory. Then we'll do something even more insane, because that's what humans do. We don't just think outside the box. We set the box on fire and use the ashes to draw a picture of a new, more impossible box. The chamber erupted in a mixture of nervous laughter, translated clicks, and various species expressions of both hope and concern. As the volunteers broke into their assigned teams, Alina watched them with a mixture of pride and trepidation. They were about to attempt something that violated not just the laws of physics, but the very concept of logical problem-solving. In less than 2 days, they would either save the galaxy or create the most spectacular failure in human history. Somehow, both options seemed equally human. The storm of chaos. The fleet that assembled at the edge of the Helios sector would have made any self-respecting military commander weep. Sleek collective vessels flew alongside retrofitted human cargo ships. Ancient Earth satellites, modified far beyond their original specifications, drifted between warships whose quantum drives had been deliberately miscalibrated to create random energy fluctuations. From the bridge of the eternal wisdom, Dr. Alina Santos watched the final preparations with a mixture of anticipation and dread. The ship's elegant control interfaces had been replaced with a chaotic array of human technology spanning 3 centuries, from touchscreens to holographic displays to physical toggle switches salvaged from old aircraft. Final status check, she called out, her voice carrying across the bridge. The responses came back in a cacophony of different languages, tones, and communication methods, exactly as planned. Commander Zix, still uncomfortable in their antiquated containment suit, moved to stand beside her. The cascade has changed course, they reported, their flame form flickering with concern. It's heading directly for us, almost as if it's curious, Alina finished, a grim smile playing across her face. Good, that's exactly what we wanted. She turned to address the bridge crew. Remember, no matter what happens, stick to the plan. Every team has different instructions, different protocols, different levels of controlled malfunction. Don't try to coordinate. Don't try to create patterns. Embrace the chaos. The massive view screen showed the approaching void cascade, a writhing mass of dark energy that seemed to devour light itself. But now, thanks to their primitive sensors, they could see something new, patterns within the chaos, like a living thing trying to make sense of what it was seeing. All teams, initiate quantum field generators, Elena commanded. Across the fleet, hundreds of jury-rigged devices sprang to life. Some were based on early quantum experiments from Earth's history. Others were alien technology deliberately operating at a fraction of their capability. Each one generated its own unique field of quantum instability. The cascade's approach slowed, almost hesitating. For the first time in recorded history, the entity showed signs of confusion. Second phase, Elena called out. Teams Alpha through Delta, activate your temporal scramblers. Teams Echo through Lima, begin your random jumps. Everyone else, do whatever your specific instructions told you to do. What followed would later be described by witnesses as organized insanity. Ships blinked in and out of existence, some using ancient human FTL theories that had been abandoned centuries ago. Others created quantum fields that deliberately collapsed in on themselves, generating patterns of chaos that rippled through space-time. The void cascade stopped completely. It's working, Commander Zix whispered, their flame form brightening with hope. It's actually. The entity suddenly surged forward, its mass expanding exponentially. Emergency alerts blared across every ship in the fleet. It's adapting. Someone shouted. It's learning to. No, Elena interrupted, her eyes wide with realization. It's not adapting. It's panicking. She rushed to her console, fingers flying over various interfaces. All teams, increase chaos levels. Push your systems beyond their safety limits. Make it worse. The fleet responded with enthusiasm. Ships began executing maneuvers that defied physics, their crews relying on human instinct rather than computer calculations. Quantum fields collapsed and reformed in patterns that shouldn't have been possible. Some teams started implementing backup plans that hadn't even been in their original instructions. Pure human improvisation in the face of crisis. The cascade's surface began to ripple erratically. Where before it had moved with purpose and precision, now it writhed like a creature in pain. Or perhaps, Elena thought, like an organism experiencing a fatal error in its operating system. All ships, prepare for final phase, Elena announced, her hand hovering over a series of switches that would activate their last, most desperate measure. Remember, when I give the signal, everyone does something different. Something unexpected. Something human. Commander Zix's flame flickered with what might have been amusement. How will we know what to do? Elena's grin was fierce. You won't. That's the point. The only instruction is, do something the cascade wouldn't expect. Something that doesn't make sense. Something that breaks all the rules. The entity before them continued to writhe, its perfect patterns dissolving into chaos as it tried to adapt to the unadaptable, to predict the unpredictable, to make sense of humanity's deliberate nonsense. Now, Elena shouted, flipping her switches in a random sequence. Across the fleet, hundreds of crews acted on pure instinct. Some fired weapons backwards. Others initiated emergency protocols that had nothing to do with the situation. A few ships simply shut down completely, their crews trusting in blind luck. The void cascade shuddered. Where once it had been a perfect predator, evolving to counter every defense, now it faced something it had never encountered in all its eons of existence. Intentional, coordinated, strategic chaos. The very concept was a paradox, and paradoxes were the one thing it could not consume or adapt to. As the entity's form began to break apart, Elena watched with a mixture of awe and satisfaction. Humanity's greatest weakness, their unpredictability, their inability to achieve perfection, had become their greatest strength. They had turned chaos itself into a weapon, and even the most perfect predator in the galaxy couldn't adapt to that. Perfection's end. The silence that followed was deafening. Where the void cascade had been, There was now only scattered debris of dark energy, dissipating like smoke in a breeze. On the bridge of the eternal wisdom, Dr. Elena Santos stared at the readings from their cobbled-together sensors, hardly daring to believe what they showed. "Is it dead?" Commander Zix asked, their flame form flickering uncertainly within their ancient containment suit. The question echoed across the bridge, translated into dozens of languages. Elena studied the readings more carefully. "Not dead," she finally said. "Something more interesting. Look at this." She gestured to a particular display, its ancient LCD screen flickering slightly. The pattern of energy dispersion told a story that made her breath catch. "It's fragmenting," she explained, "but not just physically. The cascade was essentially a perfect algorithm given form. We didn't just break its body. We broke its underlying code. We introduced so many logical paradoxes that it couldn't maintain cohesion." Across the fleet, ships began reporting similar readings. The void cascade, terror of 1,000 galaxies, was breaking down into increasingly smaller fragments, each one trying and failing to maintain the perfect pattern that had defined its existence. Aztec's theory scientist, their crystalline forms still vibrating from the recent chaos, approached the main display. "These energy signatures," they noted, their translator struggling to convey their excitement. "The fragments, they're stable, contained, almost as if they'd been transformed." Elena finished, her eyes widening with realization. "We didn't just destroy it. We changed it. Our chaos didn't erase its patterns. It forced them to evolve." The implications began to sink in across the bridge. The void cascade, an entity that had evolved to consume and adapt to perfection, had been forced to adapt to imperfection instead. The result wasn't destruction, but transformation. High Archivist Valen's holographic form materialized on the bridge, their usually perfect crystalline projection showing signs of interference, another deliberate imperfection that had helped shield them from the cascade. "The Council is demanding answers," they announced. "They want to know how. Why?" Their voice trailed off, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had just happened. Elena turned to address them, suddenly aware that her words would likely be recorded in the Grand Archive for future generations. "We succeeded because we embraced what makes us human," she said. "Not our technology, not our intelligence, but our beautiful, frustrating imperfection." She walked to the center of the bridge, her boots clicking on the deck plates that had been deliberately misaligned to create tiny quantum disturbances. Every advanced species in the galaxy evolved toward perfection. Your computers became faster, your calculations more precise, your technology more efficient. But humans, she smiled. We never lost our chaos. We never achieved perfection. And that made us the perfect weapon against something that had evolved to consume perfection. Commander Zix moved to join her, their containment suit whirring with deliberately inefficient servos. "The Council will want to study this. They'll want to understand exactly how it worked, to replicate it, to perfect it." They paused, suddenly understanding the irony. Elena laughed. "And that's exactly what we can't do. The moment we try to perfect this method, to turn it into a reliable weapon or tool, it stops working. The power comes from the chaos, from the imperfection, from the beautiful human mess of it all." Around them, the fleet began the process of powering down their jerry-rigged systems. Some ships had achieved their results through pure luck. Others had succeeded by deliberately failing in just the right way. Each crew had approached the problem differently, creating the symphony of chaos that had proved too much for even the most perfect predator in the galaxy. The remaining fragments of the void cascade continued to disperse, but Elena's sensors showed something remarkable. Where they settled, they began to create new patterns, not the rigid, perfect patterns of before, but something more organic, more adaptable, more human. "We should get teams out there," she said, already planning the next phase. "But not just scientific teams. We need artists, poets, musicians, people who can look at this transformation and see possibilities that our logical minds might miss. High Archivist Valen's hologram flickered with what might have been concern. You want to study this phenomenon with artists? Of course, Alina replied with a grin. After all, what could be more chaotic than combining scientific observation with artistic interpretation? The Cascade learned to adapt to chaos today. Now let's see what it might learn from human creativity. As the orders went out and ships began to move into observation positions, Alina looked out at the transformed space before them. Humanity had just proved that their greatest weakness, their stubborn, persistent imperfection, was actually their greatest strength. They had defeated an enemy not by becoming stronger or smarter or more advanced, but by embracing who they truly were. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, she thought with satisfaction, was perfectly imperfect. A beautiful chaos. One standard year after Operation Butterfly, the Grand Archive looked very different. Where once its crystalline chambers had housed perfect rows of data crystals and immaculate holograms, now there were deliberately asymmetric displays and art installations. Humans walked its halls alongside the most advanced species in the galaxy, their very presence introducing tiny elements of chaos into the archive's perfectly ordered systems. Dr. Elena Santos stood before the Galactic Council, but this time not as a desperate scientist with an impossible plan. Today, she was here to present the findings of what had become known as the Chaos Initiative, a revolutionary new approach to galactic civilization. The transformation of the Void Cascade taught us something profound. She began, gesturing to the swirling patterns visible through the archive's quantum windows. Where the entity had once been a force of destruction, its fragments now created beautiful, ever-changing manifestations of controlled chaos throughout the galaxy. Perfect order isn't the pinnacle of evolution. It's a dead end. The Council Chamber, once a model of geometric precision, had been redesigned with deliberate imperfections. Small quantum fluctuations rippled through its structure, creating a harmony of order and chaos that reflected humanity's influence on galactic society. High Archivist Valen, their crystalline form now incorporating subtle asymmetries, spoke first. The implications of your findings go far beyond defense systems and scientific advancement. You're suggesting a fundamental shift in how we approach everything. Elena smiled. Exactly. For millennia, advanced civilizations have strived for perfection. Perfect efficiency, perfect prediction, perfect control. But look at what happened when you encountered something that could adapt to and consume perfection. You were helpless precisely because you were too perfect. She brought up a holographic display, intentionally slightly out of focus. In the past year, species that have introduced controlled chaos into their systems have seen remarkable developments. The Zexatheres quantum computers now solve previously impossible problems by occasionally making deliberate errors. The collected ships navigate faster by sometimes choosing slightly wrong routes. Commander Zix, who had kept their antiquated containment suit as a reminder of their experience, moved their flame form in what had become recognized as a human-like nod. We've begun training our tactical AI to occasionally ignore optimal solutions in favor of, what did you call it? Gut feelings. And the results speak for themselves. Alina continued. The fragments of the cascade, rather than being a threat, have become a source of innovation. They interact with our chaos in ways that generate new possibilities, new patterns, new ways of thinking. We didn't just save the galaxy. We helped it evolve. The chamber filled with a mixture of appreciative sounds from various species. Even the most logical among them couldn't deny the evidence. The introduction of human chaos into their perfectly ordered society had led to breakthroughs that centuries of precision had failed to achieve. But there's something else, Alina said, her voice growing more serious. Something we discovered when studying the transformed cascade fragments. Something that changes everything we thought we knew about the universe. She adjusted the hologram, showing the intricate dance of energy patterns that had once been the galaxy's greatest threat. The cascade wasn't just a predator that evolved to consume perfect civilizations. It was a warning. a message from the universe itself. The chamber fell silent as Elena continued. Perfect order, perfect prediction, perfect control. These things are fundamentally opposed to the nature of our universe. The cascade was the universe's immune system, eliminating civilizations that had become too perfect, too static, too unchanging. She walked among the council members, making eye contact with each in turn. Humanity's chaos, our beautiful, frustrating, wonderful imperfection, isn't a weakness to be overcome. It's not a primitive state to evolve beyond. It's the key to true advancement. The universe doesn't want us to achieve perfection. It wants us to embrace controlled chaos, to maintain the delicate balance between order and randomness that makes life itself possible. High Archivist Valen's form pulsed with understanding. So when we encountered humanity, you didn't find a primitive species in need of guidance. Elena finished. You found the teachers you didn't know you needed. Humanity's gift to the galaxy isn't our technology or our intelligence. It's our chaos, our creativity, our stubborn refusal to do things the perfect way when the imperfect way feels right. The implications rippled through the chamber like waves in a quantum field. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy were being told that their path to perfection had been leading them toward extinction, and that salvation lay in embracing imperfection. The Chaos Initiative isn't just a research project or a defense strategy, Elena concluded. It's a new way of existing in the universe, a recognition that true advancement comes not from eliminating chaos, but from dancing with it. From finding beauty in imperfection, strength in uncertainty, and wisdom in occasionally being completely, wonderfully wrong. As she finished speaking, the transformed cascade fragments visible through the windows seemed to pulse in agreement, their patterns shifting in ways that were neither perfectly ordered nor completely random. They had become a constant reminder that the universe itself favored those who could maintain the delicate balance between chaos and order. Humanity had not just saved the galaxy. They had shown it a new way to evolve, a path that led not toward sterile perfection, but toward endless, beautiful possibility. In doing so, they had finally answered the question that had haunted advanced civilizations for eons. The purpose of life wasn't to achieve perfection, but to perfect the art of being imperfect. The age of perfect order was over. The age of beautiful chaos had begun.